Please remember, the views expressed on Albertans in Space by our guests and hosts alike are opinions and do not represent the entire industry as a whole. Our podcast serves only as a platform, and all topics discussed are primarily for educational purposes only. Welcome to Albertans in Space, this series where we talk to Albertans making waves in the local and global space industry. In today's episode, CubeSats Among Us, we'll have Priya Manavalan here from AlbertaSat, who will be joining us to discuss the Ex-Alta satellites and AlbertaSat's past and current missions. I'm your host, Zach Trolley.
And I'm your co-host and Skywalker stalker, Megan Westelmaker.
Yes.
Hey, Zach, how do you organize a party in space?
I don't know, but I want to know.
You plan it.
Well, now I know. Albertans in Space is filmed in the city of Calgary on Treaty 7 territory. This land, traditionally called Mohkinstsis, belongs to many nations and peoples who make their home here. We honor the traditions taught to us by elders to acknowledge the generosity of Mother Earth and to take care of our land as humanity expands to new worlds. Previously on Season 1, Episode 2, SpaceQ's Mark Boucher talked to us about the Ex-Alta 1 satellite built by students at the University of Alberta as part of the QB50 CubeSat mission.
Can you remind me what a CubeSat is?
I sure can. They are really, really small satellites, usually intended for short-duration scientific missions in low Earth orbit. The CubeSat form factor really took off in 2010 when NASA created the CubeSat Launch Initiative. This program provided launch space for university teams to get their CubeSats into space. The CSA started the Canadian CubeSat project in 2017, allowing for Canadian schools to access funding for their own projects.
Yay, CSA. I remember Mark mentioned moving away from making satellites that were the size of school buses to the size of a Rubik's Cube.
Yeah. They are really that small. So a CubeSat is a square-shaped miniature satellite that weighs around 4.4 pounds. And that's a 1U CubeSat. As you increase in size, you add a U. So a 2U CubeSat is double a 1U. CubeSats can be up to 6U or even 12U. They can function by themselves or in a group of multiple CubeSats as a constellation. CubeSats can be used to test instruments, conduct scientific experiments, enable commercial applications, and support educational projects.
I assume making satellites smaller reduces the cost as well as the impact in space. Humans have been able to reduce the sizes of so many key technologies. The first computer, the ENAC, was built in 1945, and it was 30 tons and 1,800 square feet.
That's a big computer.
Yeah, and in 2015, so even 10 years ago, the smallest computer was built in Michigan at 1 cubic millimeter. It might be smaller now, who knows? Your cell phone is more powerful than the computers that sent the Apollo rockets to the moon.
Miniaturization at work. It does reduce the cost, as the majority cost of getting into space is weight. The tech has been used by many post-secondary institutions. The first CubeSat was conceptualized in 1999 by science professors from the University of Stanford and the California State Polytechnic. The first ever launch included 5 other CubeSats made by 5 other countries, including Canada, Japan, Denmark, Russia, and the Czech Republic. That first CubeSat from Canada was the CanX-1, which was built at the University of Toronto. Its mission was to evaluate novel technologies in space, including a low-cost CMOS horizon sensor, a star tracker, GPS position determination, and an ARM7 central computer. There have even been CubeSats sent all the way to Mars.
I want to know more about that. We also spoke with Chris Robson from Wyvern in Season 1. They are using CubeSat technology to predict wildfires and the nutrient density in soil content with hyperspectral imaging, amongst other things. What else can CubeSats do?
So CubeSats can do everything big satellites can, but smaller. They can operate instruments in the harsh environments of space. They can take measurements from space and provide key data about Earth and other space objects. The key similarities with regular satellites is they have an antenna and radio communication systems, a payload, a power source, and a computer. Everything's there except just smaller.
How many CubeSats are out there?
Well, that's a good question. I looked this up, and way more than I thought. There have been nearly 3,000 CubeSat launch attempts in the last 25 years, with hundreds of them still active. And our guest today can tell us all about one of those CubeSats. Why don't you tell our audience all about her?
Growing up, Priya Manavalan had always wanted to be an astronaut. Her enjoyment of math and physics in high school and her budding interest in aerospace would lead her to pursue a career in the STEM fields. She would go on to chase after a mechanical engineering degree at the University of Alberta, where she would join AlbertaSat, the University of Alberta's student CubeSat team. In her 4 years with the group, Priya was involved in a variety of different space projects. She was the lead for the Deborah High Altitude Balloon mission, which sent an X-ray spectrometer to the stratosphere during a geomagnetic storm. Priya went on to be the project manager for AlbertaSat's fifth satellite, Ex-Alta 3, a remote sensing CubeSat for ice and snow monitoring. Very Canadian. Her position has given her hands-on experience with the end-to-end design of a spacecraft mission, a rare opportunity and difficult feat for a student. Even despite the challenges of a strenuous engineering course load, Priya has been able to manage a successful work-life balance between her studies, AlbertaSat, and her own personal life. Priya's interest in aerospace goes beyond AlbertaSat. She has interned at the Laboratory for Atmospheric and Space Physics as a member of Inspired Sat 3 team. She also interned at the Canadian Space Agency within the Space Science and Technology Directorate.
Well, I can't wait to meet her. Let's bring her on the show.
Welcome, Priya. Jump right in. We're rolling.
Awesome. Well, Priya, thank you so much for joining us on Albertans in Space today.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm super excited to be talking to you guys today.
So we'd like to hear, what made our guest interested in space, what their origin story is. So why are you interested in space?
Yeah, so I get this question a lot, and I feel like I can't even pinpoint exactly when I became super passionate about space. I was born and brought up in Alberta. I've lived in Edmonton my whole life. So in the Alberta curriculum, you learn about space for the first time in grade 6. So around that same time, actually the Interstellar movie also came out, and my older brother took me to go see
Great
it.
movie.
And it totally went over my head. I was 11 years old. But I found it so fascinating. And then shortly after in school, we started learning about space in science class. So that's kind of when my interest started budding, I suppose. And then throughout junior high and high school, in my friend groups and everything like that, I was known as, that's Priya. She's obsessed with space. She really wants to be an astronaut when she grows up. I was getting NASA sweatshirts for my birthdays and stuff like that. I was super interested in space and space science. I spent a lot of time just watching videos on the ISS, just on YouTube and on my free time. I really, really wanted to be an astronaut when I was in junior high and high school. And then eventually my perspective on that kind of changed when I was getting ready to go into university. But I knew I still wanted to do something in aerospace, which kind of led me to go into engineering. And I knew almost immediately that I wanted to go into mechanical engineering because it was definitely one of the more versatile disciplines. And at the U of A, we don't have a formal aerospace program. And so this was kind of the closest thing. And while I was in university in first year, I learned about the group AlbertaSat, and I decided to join in my second semester of first year. And since then, I've been super involved in the group, and my love for space and aerospace engineering has grown.
And can you tell us a little bit about the CubeSat challenge and how AlbertaSat kind of fits into that program?
Yeah, for sure. AlbertaSat is unique in that our very first satellite that we built wasn't really a part of a CubeSat challenge or a program sponsored by the CSA. It was actually through something called QB50, which was through the Von Karman Institute. And so the Space Physics Lab here and AlbertaSat developed Ex-Alta 1 and its instruments, and it was actually the very first made in Alberta satellite. So this was a huge accomplishment for the university. It was
absolutely
a historic moment for Albertans in general. We finally have access to space. And that's from that mission, we started doing, participating in something called the CSDC, the Canadian CubeSat CubeSat Design Challenge. And basically what it is, it's kind of like a competition where different university teams throughout the country, they design CubeSats. And I guess I should provide a little bit more context on what exactly a CubeSat is. These are very unique spacecraft. They're small form factor satellites, which means they follow basically a standardized design in some respects. And they're made up of these things called units. So each unit is a 10 by 10 by 10 centimeter cube of satellite hardware. So you can have, I've heard of things from like half a unit to like 12 units. I actually one summer worked on a satellite that was 27 units.
Okay.
So it's a really wide range of sizes.
So it's like a Lego, like you can just Lego them together to make like
kind of
any shape, or it has to be a cube?
It doesn't necessarily have to be a cube. I'll admit I haven't seen anything that like isn't really in like a prism form factor, but the satellites that I've worked on at least have been rectangular or a cube. And so these are really cool spacecrafts for student teams to build because they are somewhat standardized, and more we're seeing components in industry, like commercial off-the-shelf components that are created specifically for the form factor for CubeSats. So this is why these kinds of satellites are becoming more popular with student teams and more popular in general, because they're easier to produce. It was kind of the motivation behind, I guess, AlbertaSat doing CubeSats, and I assume why CSDC focuses on CubeSats. So during CSDC, we participated a few times, but our mission after Ex-Alta 1, Ex-Alta 2 started out in CSDC, and then the Canadian CubeSat project started. So this was an initiative through the Canadian Space Agency, where basically they provided grants to different university teams all across Canada and inspired them to design, develop, build, and launch and operate CubeSats as university students, which is a very unique and rare opportunity. Something cool that the University of Alberta did for the CCP project was we actually built the bus for 3 different satellites. So our CCP project, Ex-Alta 2, was part of a consortium of satellites with the Aurora Research Institute, as well as Yukon University. So our students built Ex-Alta 2, which was a 3U CubeSat. It's about the size of a loaf of bread. And that was entirely our satellite. All the payloads came from the U of A. The entire bus came from the U of A. And we also built the bus for AuroraSat and YukonSat, which were satellites for Aurora Research Institute and Yukon University. And then those respective universities developed the payloads for those CubeSats.
When you say bus, what's the bus in the satellite?
Yeah, so the satellite bus is basically anything other than the payload. Okay. So it's the computer, the attitude control system, the antennas, communications, the structure, all of that. It's everything that's supporting the primary scientific mission, or in the case of AuroraSat and YukonSat, they were educational outreach missions.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
How did you get involved in the position that you're in? Because you're a project manager on different satellite projects that AlbertaSat's doing. So how did you get into that position? Did you start at that project manager level, or did you kind of work your way into it?
So when I first started in AlbertaSat, I was in first year. I knew nothing about satellites. I didn't even know that I was interested in satellites. I always kind of imagined myself going the more like rocketry route. But I had a few friends that were in AlbertaSat that kind of led me to join as well. And I started out just on the admin team. I was helping out with social media posts, blog posts, helping with the website, that kind of thing. The summer after I joined, I was asked to join a small team dedicated to building AlbertaSat a clean room. Basically what that is when you're building satellites, there are certain cleanliness requirements for the hardware that you're using, because it's at times really, really sensitive equipment. So even dust getting on the hardware can damage it. So typically any spacecraft is assembled and integrated in a clean space. And these clean spaces are super expensive. And student teams like AlbertaSat, we have a very limited budget. We can't spend 20, 30, 40 grand on a clean room dedicated for our project. So our workaround was actually to build a clean room just out of PVC piping and ABS pipes, and then vinyl from Home Depot. We taped it on with duct tape and put woodworking filters on there and developed our own clean room that actually met the cleanliness requirements. And then from there, I just became more and more involved in different projects within AlbertaSat. So at the end of the summer, when we finished the clean room project, AlbertaSat was actually starting a balloon mission project. And since I had been more involved with this small sub clean room project, I was asked if I wanted to be the project manager for this high altitude balloon mission. And so that's kind of how I got my foot in the door in the project management roles. And the balloon mission was a great experience. After the balloon mission ended, we were right at the end of the Northern Spirit Consortium mission, and we were just starting our satellite that we're working on right now, Ex-Alta 3. I was asked to then become the project manager for Ex-Alta 3, and I've been in that role since.
What was the balloon mission? What was that all about?
That was a really cool mission that AlbertaSat did in partnership with the Space Physics Lab here at the University of Alberta. Mm-hmm. So if you've ever seen like a weather balloon launch or anything like that, it's the same thing. It's a high altitude balloon, and it reaches really high altitudes, like 30 kilometers. I think our balloon reached almost 34 kilometers or something like that. And so what we were doing is we developed an X-ray spectrometer, and we put it on the balloon to take measurements of bremsstrahlung X-rays in the stratosphere. So these are X-rays that are the result of collisions between neutral particles and charged particles in the atmosphere. And you see a lot more of them during solar storms. Whenever you see like an aurora or anything like that, you'll see a lot more bremsstrahlung X-rays. And so that's kind of what the Space Physics Lab was trying to measure. So our team built the gondola and all the peripherals for the payload and everything like that, and worked on the mission for about a year. After we developed everything and we were ready to launch, we entered into this like really long waiting period because we had to have just the correct geomagnetic conditions in order for us to get good data. So it was basically an entire summer and then an entire spring of us thinking that we had the right geomagnetic conditions, prepping the launch, calling Nav Canada, telling them that we're launching, sourcing all the trucks, notifying the field that we were launching from, all that kind of stuff. And then the launch would get canceled at the 11th hour. So it was a lot of disappointments for about a year until finally, May 2024, there was a huge geomagnetic storm. The auroras were really, really bright, especially around the Edmonton area, I'm sure in Calgary as well.
I remember hearing that,
Yeah. I did not get to see the auroras because I was fast asleep.
He has yet to see them too.
Yeah, never seen one.
No, it has to be really dark too. So.
Yeah. I didn't get to see them just because I was asleep getting ready to launch this balloon because I believe it was the biggest magnetic storm since like 2006 or something like that. So it was a really great opportunity for our project. We all had our fingers crossed. We were hoping for perfect weather. And then we woke up and it was super, super smoky in Edmonton. Fortunate for us, the smoke wasn't really a problem. We could still see well enough to inflate the balloon and get the payload ready, all of that, and proceed with the launch. And so we launched from just south of Edmonton, and we were watching like where the balloon was planning on going, and it was approaching the military base in Wainwright. And so we were like, please don't land in the middle of the base.
It's going to get shot down.
Of course, it did end up landing in the middle of the military base.
Okay.
So yeah, we drove down there. We went and like explained the situation, and they were really excited.
Just knock on the door and say, hey, excuse me, we need to get our weather balloon.
Literally, yeah.
We weren't spying. I'm sorry.
And they were so nice and accommodating. Basically, they were like, we can't help you today, but if you come back tomorrow morning, we'll give you a military escort to go find this balloon.
Oh, nice.
And so that's exactly what we did. We came back the next morning, we got our military escort, and we communicate with the balloon through ham radio. And the antennas have to be oriented up and down, basically, for us to get a signal from the balloon. So we were really concerned that we weren't going to get a signal because if it was toppled over or something like that, you might not be able to hear it. And so we're driving through the military base with our escort, and all of a sudden we hear a ping like right away. And we didn't have to go like trekking through the forest or anything to find it. So we were all super elated. And so we stopped the car, got out, and followed where the signal was coming from. And then when we finally saw it, it was in the middle of a lake.
Oh, no.
So everything that can go wrong did go wrong for this mission.
So you went fishing?
Yes, exactly. We were lassoing this payload out of the lake. We debated maybe swimming in to go get it, but there were leeches and everything in the pond, so we didn't want to. But eventually we managed to get the payload back. The data looked great. Our partners at the Space Physics Lab processed the data, and we actually ended up publishing a paper in the AGU Physics Journal about that mission. So in the end, it was a success. It was a lot of work getting to that point, and a lot of disappointments on the way, but I'm super, super glad for that experience. It was a smaller mission, a smaller timeline, but I think it gave me and all the other students on that team a lot of great experience with an aerospace mission. And I went on to be the project manager of AlbertaSat's satellite mission. And a lot of our team members ended up being the team leads and technical experts on the satellite mission after we finished the balloon.
So, Priya, I mean, you're a young woman taking on these very complex projects and tasks, and like you just said, there's been a lot of disappointments. How have you been getting over these setbacks and keep on going? I mean, usually you need to have years of experience to overcome these hurdles, and you just seem to be jumping over them no problem. What's your secret?
It's definitely not easy in the moment. Space is very difficult. Nothing goes right the first time you do it. Things don't go correctly on the ground, and sometimes things don't go correctly during operations and in space, right? And I think just keeping in mind that this is the first time myself and any of my team members are ever doing something like this is important. And there's no expectation externally for us to get everything right the first time around. I think also keeping in mind that really the primary purpose of student projects and supporting things like AlbertaSat and our satellite missions and our balloon missions is to support student learning. It's not necessarily to be conducting groundbreaking science, although sometimes that's like an added
sometimes you
benefit. And so you don't learn without making mistakes. Mistakes are totally normal in space, particularly in space when you're still developing. So I think keeping in mind that we're all still students, we're not fully fledged aerospace engineers yet, is a good motivator.
I'm still a student. I'm constantly learning. I feel like once you stop learning, what's the point? You know what I mean? Like you should always be aiming for that next learning experience, no matter what it is.
Yeah, for sure.
So when you talk to, let's say you're giving advice to a first year undergrad or even a high school student, right? Many of our guests have told us that space is very hard, it's challenging, it's difficult. What do you tell them? They say, I want to get involved in space. Do you say, yeah, it's really hard, really challenging? How do you pep them up for this kind of experience?
Yeah, usually I tell them that they shouldn't be intimidated of how much they don't know, especially if they're particularly asking about joining our team. We exist to be the lowest barrier of entry into the space sector, particularly for students. So we're all in the same boat. Don't be afraid of asking questions. Don't be afraid of volunteering to participate in technical stuff, even though it seems like the learning curve is super steep. The learning curve is really steep, but we've all gone through it. We're here to help. This isn't anyone's, personal project. All of us are super passionate about space, and all of us want to see more students, especially students in Alberta, become more involved in the space sector. And so I guess that's my biggest piece of advice. Don't be intimidated, or try not to be, at least.
It's very intimidating, but I think, having people like yourself being so vocal about your experiences and the way that you speak about it's kind of, it's more interesting and intriguing to get involved in it. So that's great. Thank you for doing that. We want to see a flourishing space community in Alberta. What is the Northern Alberta Radio Club, and what's its involvement with AlbertaSat?
The Northern Alberta Radio Club is the amateur radio club in Edmonton and surrounding areas. And so amateur radio, it's a very historic sort of hobbyist group, and they played a key role in aerospace and particularly in AlbertaSat. There's actually a ham radio transceiver on the ISS, so some ham radio enthusiasts sometimes you can just radio up to the ISS and talk to the astronauts there.
Ask them questions and
You can
things.
ham radio
Just
to
chat
the
with them.
ISS? Really?
Maybe season 3 we talk to the ISS directly from
that.
here.
Maybe Priya can.
Yeah, I've
can
always
help
wanted
us
to
out
do
with
it,
that?
but yeah, no, it's really cool, and it's a great community. They're very passionate about keeping ham radio alive and keeping it relevant in this day and age. And they also support like different things like search and rescue efforts, that kind of thing. We've done these things called fox hunts with the amateur radios here in Edmonton. Basically what they are is they'll hide transmitters just like in a park or something like that. And then you'll have an antenna and a radio, and you'll use like different techniques to try and find the transmitters. So it's like a fun little like hide and seek game, but it also serves the purpose to like show you different techniques that they use in search and rescue efforts.
Interesting.
Yeah. And so their involvement with AlbertaSat, NARC is super supportive of our team. They're actually hosting one of our ground stations on their site. So our satellites communicate in 2 different bands. So the UHF band, which is ultra high frequency, and S band. And so S band is how we get all of our scientific data down from the satellite. And so it requires a different type of ground station than UHF. So we have a UHF ground station at the university, just on one of our engineering buildings. NARC helped us develop an S-band ground station just a little bit outside of Edmonton. So they've hosted that for us. They also support us a lot in student training. So they have members of NARC come and do examinations for our students. We've gotten dozens of students certified in amateur radio in that way. And we need students to become certified in amateur radio in order to do operations. And of course, we love when students get more involved with NARC themselves and with the ham radio community.
Nobody on the show here in Albertans in Space has launched a spacecraft or even built a spacecraft. So we want to know from you, what does it feel like to like stand in front of something and be able to touch it and know that it's going into space? What's that like?
It's definitely surreal. My involvement so far has been mostly on Ex-Alta 3, which is still on the bench, hasn't gone to space yet. But yeah, like seeing it come together, seeing the hardware come together, and knowing that one day we're actually going to be talking to it in orbit and it's going to be contributing to important climate change research while it's in space is definitely surreal. And I'm super, super grateful that in my undergrad, I'm able to participate in a mission like that.
So what is the payload that's going up on that mission?
Yeah, so Ex-Alta 3 is sort of a continuation of the mission of Ex-Alta 2. So for Ex-Alta 2, we had an imager on board that was developed to support wildfire research. For Ex-Alta 3, we have a modified imager that will support ice and snow monitoring, so monitoring of cryospheric regions, particularly in Canada, but not limited to. And so the reason why we chose that mission for Ex-Alta 3 was because of the orbit that we have the opportunity to go on this time. So for all of our previous missions, they went into what's called an ISS orbit, which means they were sent up to the International Space Station and deployed from the ISS. And so they basically like orbit the Earth like this. And for this mission, we have the opportunity to go onto a sun-synchronous orbit, which more closely resembles like a polar orbit. So it goes around the poles like this. And since we already had some heritage from our previous imager, we were really keen on continuing our imaging missions. And now, since we had coverage over the poles, we decided to develop the imager to prioritize those remote sensing goals. We have a bit of a longer operational period this time, so we're hoping we'll be able to contribute open source data from our imager to all sorts of researchers, basically anyone who wants to use it to supplement their own research, especially if it has to do with cryospheric climate change research. And the
amazing.
other cool thing about IRIS, though, IRIS is our imager, is that in the summer months, it'll still be able to support the wildfire research monitoring efforts as a continuation of our mission from Ex-Alta 2.
That's pretty cool.
That's amazing. And open source, wow. I feel like that is the way that all research should be. That's a really cool mission that you guys are embarking on. Mm-hmm. And when is Ex-Alta 3 planning to go into orbit?
Yeah, so it'll be mid to late 2026 is what we're looking at right now.
Okay.
And so what are you working on right now within the timeline?
Yeah, so we just finished our critical design review with the Canadian Space Agency just in June. So that went super well. So now we basically have the go-ahead to enter the assembly, integration, and testing phase of the mission. So what that is we have our hardware all here and ready to go. We're going to test all of our software on it. We'll develop something called a flat-sat. So if you've ever seen like the internal organs of a CubeSat, basically it's like a bunch of boards stacked on top of each other.
Like motherboards?
Yeah.
Computer things.
Motherboards, yeah. Computer things?
Yeah, exactly. But before we do that, we want to make sure that all of our software that we've written works and test everything before assembling the satellite. So we make something called a flat sat, which is basically when we take all the different components on the satellite and we lay it out flat on a table, and we connect everything the same way you would in the real satellite, and we fully test all of our software and everything just on the flat sat. So that will happen during AINT. And then after all of that is tested, we will assemble the actual satellite and then proceed with functional testing of the fully assembled and fully integrated satellite. So that includes putting it in a thermal vacuum chamber so we can like simulate the thermal conditions and vacuum of space to make sure everything's operating correctly. We'll also put it on what's called a shaker table. Basically what it does is it simulates the vibrations that the satellite will experience during its launch. So to make sure that mechanically everything is okay before we send it to the CSA. And then once everything is tested on our end, we bring the satellite to the Canadian Space Agency where it's integrated with the deployer pod.
Now, how do you bring a satellite to the CSA? Do you put it in your check-on luggage? Do you send it like ground ship it? How do you ship a satellite?
Yeah, so for our previous mission, I believe they just took it on as like carry-on luggage.
Okay. I'm
not sure if security was super happy with that because it doesn't look great, taking out this like satellite with a bunch of wires.
Briefcase, lots of, no one knows what's going on here. Just trust me, it's fine. It's safe. Yeah.
Yeah, but it worked for them for Northern Spirit. So right now that's our plan.
That's the plan. Just take it on, just check it as luggage. Sure, why not?
Amazing. And where does it launch from?
So all of our previous satellites have launched from Cape Canaveral, just down in Florida. For this one, we are suspecting that it'll be in Vandenberg in California because a lot of SSO launches happen from there. So we do know it'll be on a SpaceX transporter mission, though.
What year are you in right now?
I'm in fifth-ish year is what I like to say.
Fifth-ish? I've done one of those too. I know how that's like. Yeah.
It's a Van Wilder.
Yeah.
No,
I was just saying that. Yeah.
Just kidding. She's probably never seen that movie too. So what are your plans? What do you want to personally do when you graduate?
That's a scary question. I'm like 6 months away from graduating, so I'm definitely thinking about that a lot right now. I think right now I don't really plan on doing graduate studies or anything like that. I'm really keen on getting some industry experience before considering going back to school. So I'd love to work for any of the Canadian aerospace companies. We have a lot of alumni that go on to work at MDA. We have alumni at the CSA as well. And yeah, just other companies in Canada. So I think that's probably my plan. I try to get a job in industry and then get some experience for a few years and then reevaluate.
Well, if there's anybody out there in industry that needs a new talent, we have some right here for you.
Well, ideally, she stays in Alberta.
Right, that's true, yes.
She helps grow the Alberta space economy.
Absolutely.
She's going to be the CEO of the next Wyvern, or she's going to work with Wyvern, maybe. Wyvern.
Yeah.
We see you, Chris.
So we're at the point of our podcast where we like to do our book club. And we're going to get our book club hats on here. And we like to ask our guests to bring a book forward to talk about it. And it gets us to know you a bit better. Our audience can read that book and understand you a bit better. So what book did you bring for book club today?
Sure. At the risk of being a little bit basic, because I think maybe every Canadian who's interested in aerospace has read this book already, I brought An Astronaut's Guide to Life by Chris Hadfield. So my dad actually got this for me when I turned 15, because I was in my I really want to be an astronaut phase. And I reread it recently, and I just think it's a very well written book and gives you a lot of insight into what it's like being an astronaut and what it's like just working in the space industry in general, because of course Chris Hadfield has had a lot of experience on the ground as well as experience on his various missions. And so I think this book provides a lot of guidance for young people in particular who either dream of being astronauts or dream of working in the space industry. I think one particular thing that he talked about in this book that really spoke to me was he had this spiel about aiming to be a zero, where basically he categorized everyone into 3 different categories: a -1, a 0, and a 1. If you're a -1, you're hindering. If you're a +1, you're helping. And if you're a 0, you're doing neither, but you're not being a barrier to anyone.
You're neutral.
Or anything like that.
Yeah.
And he describes a situation where he was on his last ISS mission, and there was an ammonia leak on the ISS, and they basically had to do an emergency spacewalk. And his 2 crewmates were chosen as the astronauts to do the spacewalk, and he felt a sense of anyone because anyone would want to be chosen to do the spacewalk.
I want to be the hero. Yeah,
exactly. And then in that moment, he thought to himself that, as a leader, it's okay to have your team do the fancy, exciting things sometimes. And it's okay to take a step back and be the person that makes that possible and support your team. And I think the reason why that and, the being the 0 aspect really spoke to me is because I feel like, especially in AlbertaSat, my roles have often been leadership and management roles. I'm also in mechanical engineering. I am interested in technical work, but you don't always get the opportunity to do the fun, nitty-gritty technical work when you're in a leadership position. And I think a skill that I feel like I've developed throughout the years is learning when it's time to be a support person rather than the superstar of the project. That's a great lesson to learn early on, because I feel like in the real world, if I'm ever in another management position, I know the value of humility in leadership roles. So
the ego can get in the way all the time. So
Absolutely,
it's nice to know that you just you can be the support. And when we come together without ego, we can do a lot. We can accomplish a lot.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think even throughout my internships and stuff like that, I've had really good managers and okay managers, and the really good project managers that I've worked with, they're people who have a lot of trust in their team, and they know when to defer to their technical experts.
And we talked to Robert Thirsk on episode 1 of season 2, and we talked about those soft skills and how important they are in teamwork. And I think you just nailed that exactly. You're echoing Bob's words here and how important that is for these high performing teams.
Oh yeah, definitely. And you're in good company because Dr. Shauna Pandya, who was our guest in episode 7 last year, she had the same book for book club. So
wow, okay.
I feel like everyone should read it now.
Yeah,
definitely.
Fantastic choice.
Awesome. Thank you for that, for bringing that book to book club. We've come to the portion of our episode where we ask our followers on either TikTok or Instagram to ask a burning question that they've had for someone who works in space or in the space field. And so we have a question today from an individual that Sandra Lynn will introduce to us.
I love the flight suit.
Thank you. This is my Halloween costume from last year.
She's been wearing it for a week straight.
For the whole weekend. Well, yes, it's my onesie now. Today's question comes to us as a direct message on Instagram from Kirsten Schultz from Burnaby, British Columbia. Is there any sound in space?
I don't think that there's sound in space because space is a vacuum, right? So in order for sound to travel, you need some sort of medium for it to travel through because they are sound waves. So in space itself, everything would be silent. I'm sure you've all seen, like, in space movies, the shots that are, like, of space, of spaceship exploding or something like that. Sometimes they make it just completely silent to mimic what it's actually like.
Was it the movie Gravity that had that epic explosion in space? And it was so quiet. It was so eerie and quiet. I think it might have been Gravity, but it could be wrong.
Correct.
That's great.
You're right. Bingo. She got it right.
You get a sticker. We'll send you one in the mail.
Awesome.
Awesome. Well, we'll get Zach back over here. Thank you, Sandra Lynn.
Bye. See ya.
Thank you so much for being our guest on Albertans in Space for the episode about CubeSats. And we can't wait to see what AlbertaSat does in the future, besides in the next year when Ex-Alta 3 goes up.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
We would like to thank Priya Manavalan for joining us today and allowing us to highlight the achievements of the next generation of science and technology professionals that are kicking ass and taking names and literally making their mark and building our future.
If you'd like to keep up to date with Priya and the AlbertaSat team, check out their Instagram page at Alberta_sat.
Shout out to Sandra Lynn for her writing research efforts, Matt Waterworth, our sound video engineer at No Cap Content Studios, his assistant Parth Kalkar, 6 Degrees Music and Sound, and Kristen, our behind-the-scenes photographer, for helping us make this podcast sound and look amazing. On the next episode of Albertans in Space, we speak with Kaylee Beer, president of #Calgary to Space, who are developing Calgary's first Cube satellite.
Thank you so much for watching Albertans in Space. Make sure to tune in to our socials to watch behind-the-scenes content and exclusive content. You can watch Albertans in Space on TELUS Optic TV, Stream Plus, and our YouTube channel. For those who prefer listening, catch us on Spotify. If you like the show, don't forget to hit subscribe and give us a like. Your support means the world to us.
Lastly, stay connected. Follow and say hi to us on Instagram at @AlbertansInSpace_podcast and on TikTok at Albertans in Space.
Thanks so much, and we'll see you next time.
Peace.